New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, good morning, good morning. I've been in a traffic jam on the internet. You know, one of the things I love about the fact that we live stream this show is that it's live. And so you don't know what's going to happen until it happens. And actually, this is the very first time that I have experienced our broadcast platform actually give the message that we got a traffic jam here, try again in 30 to 60 seconds, and try again, and try again, and try again, and try again. And as I was starting to get a little frustrated, I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is like what we teach in science of mind. Conditions happen, and what we're responsible for is how we respond to those conditions. So I had to laugh at myself, which of course then broke the mounting frustration. And it was like, well, Tracy, it's not in your control. And the perfect time, all the resources will work together, and voila, here we are together on the Saturday morning Science of Mind conversations with Tracy Brown this week. And if you are new to the Saturday morning conversations, then let me tell you how it works. There's a team of 7 of us, and one of us is here every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time to either go over and summarize a chapter of the Science of Mind textbook, or after mid-August, to highlight something from the Science of Mind library and archives that helps all of us to understand and apply key spiritual principles as taught through the Science of Mind. And so please join us every Saturday. I won't be here next Saturday, but some other amazing person will, and I will be back in a few weeks. Today, you're stuck with me, Tracy Brown. And if you are new to us and you want to say hi in the chat and let us know where you're from, feel free to do that. Thanks, Shay. I know that you were putting out some energy, calming the waters and opening the flow for there to be enough bandwidth for this show to air. And I am grateful for everyone who is here, either live or by recording, because today we are focusing on the chapter 18, which is titled The Law of Attraction. A few years ago, I had the biggest laugh because all of a sudden people were talking about the law of attraction, this new thing that, either because they had watched the film The Secret or because they had been exposed to Abraham Hicks. And it was just fascinating to me that this spiritual principle that has been in operation forever, for eternity, for the infinity of life itself, that people thought they had discovered something new. And I love that when Ernest Holmes wrote The Science of Mind in the 1920s, that he dedicated a full chapter to the law of attraction. So you may be able to see it on the screen, but this chapter runs from page 294 through page 307 in the textbook. And while the title for the chapter is The Law of Attraction, the subtitles are Thought Atmosphere, like what is the atmosphere of thought, Attraction of Personality, Attracting Friends, Attracting Success, No Failures, No Personal Responsibility, The Law of Correspondence. So there are 7 subsections in this chapter. And I mention that now because I'm not going to go in depth with all 7. I'm going to highlight a few things from 3 or 4 of the subsections. But if those subsection titles connect with you in any way energetically, then I encourage you to actually read this entire chapter. It really is a strong chapter, and it is the perfect lead in to what comes next, which is the practice of spiritual mind healing. And if you don't understand what the law of attraction is and how it works, then it's harder to learn and apply spiritual mind healing. So one other general comment about this chapter. So Ernest Holmes has many chapters, and they are in sections or parts of the book. So there is an introductory section where he basically summarized the whole philosophy in 4 chapters. Then he opens the book officially. And in part 1, he really does an amazing job of explaining and teaching us about the nature of the universe. Take people out of the equation. Just how does the universe work? How does God work? What is God and what does God do? What are the universal principles that result in lifing? And then in part 2, Ernest Holmes really basically takes us into how we use it, or what is, actually, that's not true. It's better to describe part 2 as how these universal laws apply to humanity. So for the last 10 chapters or so, we've been in part 2, and that has really been about man's relationship with the universe, humanity's relationship with these spiritual laws. And then in part 3, it's how we use it. So spiritual mind treatment and things like that. So the law of attraction happens to be the last chapter in part 2. The law of attraction is the final chapter in this section or this part of the book that is focused on how universal spiritual law plays out with humanity. So that's important too, to know that we're in that framework of understanding law and how it applies to all humanity, and we are beginning to build the bridge to how we can use it, how we can use the law. So law of attraction, page 294, first paragraph, Ernest Holmes writes, spiritual mind healing is a result of the constructive use of a mental law, which the world is gradually beginning to understand. Since we are thinking beings and cannot stop thinking, and since creative mind receives our thought and cannot stop creating, it must always be creating something for us. What it will make depends wholly upon what we are thinking, and what we shall attract shall depend upon that on which our thoughts dwell. I don't know why I don't have that last part highlighted. Of all the times that I've read this book and studied this chapter, so I am now highlighting creative mind receives our thought and cannot stop creating. It must always be creating something for us. What it will create depends wholly, WHOLLY, wholly upon what we are thinking, and what we shall attract will depend upon that on which our thoughts dwell. No mistake, we say thoughts are things. No mistake, we say change your thinking and you will change your life. Because thought creates the atmosphere from which universal mind delivers into our life, delivers things and people and experiences and adventures, and our human experience is delivered to us, and it depends on the thought atmosphere that we each create. Does that make sense to you? I'm always curious when I am repeating or reading or applying science of mind, because it makes sense to me, but sometimes I'm not sure if it just makes sense to me because, I've read it a gazillion times. And that might be a slight exaggeration, but not really. I've read it over and over and over and over and over. And, teaching different classes, we're having to read or reread specific chapters, and doing this on Saturday mornings, whether I'm actually presenting information or watching. Same thing. It's like, oh, I'm getting reintroduced to it as if for the first time. Sometimes it feels like, oh, my life has changed so much. Oh, this is how this applies now. So I hope for you that as you hear Ernest Holmes' words about the law of attraction, you can go, oh, yes, this is what it means to me. So Ernest Holmes goes on to write in the second paragraph, thought can attract to us that which we first mentally embody, that which has become a part of our mental makeup, a part of our inner understanding. Translation, it's what you think about a lot or what you think about that you have strong emotion about that will attract, that you will attract that thing, that person, that experience into your life. More of that, please. It's like every time that you are reinforcing a thought, you are saying, more of that, please, right? More of this in my life, please. And that works no matter what you're thinking. So chase to the bottom or skip to the bottom line. The law of attraction is always working. So if I am thinking about how hard it is to keep my business running, and I'm thinking about that, and every day I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's so hard. Everybody has said no, or oh, I haven't heard back from people, or right. The universe is simply saying, oh, she is saying more of that, please. She is asking for more of that, please, and thank you. So that is why we are intentional about choosing thoughts that represent what we want more of. That is why you will hear me and Reverend Dr. Robert and Reverend Z, Elzia, and just about everybody on this network. At some point, you will hear us say, focus on what you want, not what you don't want. Focus on what you want, whether it's in affirmations, whether it's in spiritual mind treatment or mental healing, whether it is in your journaling. Don't ignore what isn't working, because what isn't working lets you know what you actually would prefer to have instead. So notice what isn't working and then shift into, I want more joy. I want ease and grace. I have ease and grace in my life. I am the center of joy, right? You begin to affirm that which you desire as if it is already so, because your subconscious doesn't know the difference. So if you are saying, I am the center of joy, my life is joyful over and over and over again, then the universe has to deliver that to you. That's the law of attraction in a nutshell. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what Ernest Holmes has to say about it. And Shay, I'm right with you. Shay writes, I still have trouble with this one because I definitely didn't attract experiences that were completely out of my control. And I know for a fact that I co-created things out of no things, from nothing to something. So we'll get into this a little bit more in a few minutes, but I want to say something about this right now, because if Shay is thinking it, I know other people are thinking it, and I resonate with it so much. So the law of attraction is not only working on an individual basis. The law of attraction is working for every individual, and it is working for the collective as well. So let's do a little experiment here, except I don't have my phone in my office. So I'm going to go over to a different screen on my browser, and I'm going to type in Alexa, What percentage of women in the United States have breast cancer diagnoses each year?
From verywellhealth.com. In the United States, 13% of women are diagnosed with breast cancer, with rates varying by age and ethnicity.
13% of women are diagnosed with breast cancer.
And here's more about that.
Alexa, thank you. Stop. 13%. That is in our collective consciousness. I don't personally believe I am going to have breast cancer. It's not been a trend in my family, although there have been one or two people, but it hasn't been a pattern in my immediate family or blood relatives. I don't believe I am attracting it. I sure am not saying I don't want cancer, which could bring it because it's in my mind. I'm not saying that, I'll 13%, that's, probably I'm going to be one of them. But if I am diagnosed with cancer, it could reflect the collective consciousness around doctors. I've actually had a doctor say to me a few years ago that 25% of women are going to be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, of adult women, 25% of adult women, which is a much higher number than what Alexa just gave us. And so I know in my own life, right? I didn't attract racism because I was thinking about being discriminated against or hated because of the color of my skin. I know that Jewish people who were killed in the Holocaust were not sitting around thinking, oh, we're Jewish, we deserve to be killed. And the consciousness of another group of people was very strong and was very clear and was attracting the power and the hatred that resulted in what we now refer to as the Holocaust, or what we now see in the 21st century as racism. And that works on a smaller scale too, right? So the consciousness in our families shows up in our individual lives, and it's beyond something that I might have individually requested or focused on. So what we teach about this thought atmosphere is that we are influencing what happens. And yes, the universe depends wholly upon what we are thinking, and what we shall attract will depend on that on which our thoughts dwell. So in the context of living in a culture where there is race-based hatred and violence, I get to choose how I want to navigate that, because I can't control the actions, beliefs, and thoughts of others. This shows up in our health all the time, our mental health, our emotional health, as well as our physical health, because we are operating in an environment where the collective or cultural consciousness believes, oh, you're going to be sick. Oh, everybody gets the flu. Oh, there's got to be drama in family relationships or friendships, right? All of that. So it's all working at the same time. Now, taking a breath, knowing that, then I want to go back to, yes, Ernest Holmes is very much in this chapter focusing on how we influence and take responsibility for as much as possible in our individual lives by being aware or becoming intentional about knowing what we want to attract and then living as if it is so. Because as Wayne reminds us, the universe loves Wayne, and the universe loves every one of us. And because of that, it is always working to gift us with what we define as our good. On page 295, second paragraph, Ernest Holmes writes, everyone automatically attracts to themselves just what they are, and we may set it down that wherever we are, however intolerable the situation may be, we are just where we belong. There is no power in the universe but ourselves that can free us. Someone may help us on the road to realization, but substantiality and permanence can come only throughout the consciousness of our own life and thought. So, Shay, I am so glad that you brought up what you did when you did, because now I can keep going back to that thread as I go through the entire chapter. And I will use myself as an example because I think, not because I'm stuck on race and racism, but it's just an easily accessible example. And it applies in so many different ways to whatever identity group anyone who is watching might be in. So I love that, Ernest Holmes says, however intolerable the situation may be, we are just where we belong. And yeah, I did not attract being enslaved or being discriminated against based on race or race-based hatred or violence. But I am in that context, or I grew up in that context. And today, even in 2024, it is still a factor. But what I get to do is I attract how I am going to navigate that experience. I can't pretend that it doesn't happen. And to follow up that with the sentence, there is no power in the universe but ourselves that can free us, really challenges us to understand the meaning of the word freedom. And I guess it's no coincidence that we're talking about this just a few days before Juneteenth, which is all about freedom. And what I had to come to realize as I was learning to apply these principles in my life a few decades ago, was that yes, freedom is an inside out job. Any false belief that one group of human beings gets to free another group of human beings is just that, a false belief that you can legislate certain changes and standards, but they're always going to reflect, right, the collective consciousness of whatever time you're in. And so when I think about my ancestors 4 or 5 generations back who were enslaved, wow, there was still within them that sense of freedom. I don't control all the conditions of the environment I'm in, but I am committing to freedom. I am moving toward freedom. I will fight for freedom, but I am thinking about freedom and what that means, and the spiritual freedom of I have been made in the likeness and image, the spiritual likeness and image of the Creator. And so this family might think or believe they own me as property, but that is different from me living from a place of inner freedom. Inner freedom. And so the law of attraction simply is reminding us that we can tell the truth about ourselves. Ernest Holmes writes lower on in 295 toward the end of the second paragraph. Declare the truth about yourself, realizing that you are reflecting your statements into consciousness and that they will be operated upon by consciousness. This is called in mysticism high invocation, invoking the divine mind, implanting within it seeds of thought relative to oneself. So I am planting, in the acorn. The acorn has everything within that tiny seed to be a magnificent and ancient oak tree. So when I am using the law of attraction, I am planting the seed of who I want to be, how I want to be in the world, the experience I want to have. In the second subsection in this chapter, it's titled Attraction of Personality. And I like this paragraph a lot. The ones to whom we are most strongly attracted are not necessarily the ones who are the most beautiful physically, but are the ones from whom we receive that subtle emanation, that something. What is that something? It is that which emanates from within. It is the inner recognition of capital R reality. Now we know, and knowing means using the law in a constructive way. I and the Father are one. This is strength for the weak, and this is life for all who believe. We can so fill ourselves with the drawing power of attraction that it will become irresistible. So the law of attraction is just that reminder that while we don't control every circumstance, we are the biggest influencer in what kind of life we live in whatever condition we find ourselves. I don't want to ignore the fact that, yes, we can use the law of attraction to get things. We can use the law of attraction to attract a new house, a new job, a new lover, a new anything. We can. But we need to understand the law of attraction is always working, and it is always responding to our thoughts, our demands upon the universe, our seeds that we plant for the kind of life we want to have. The universe only has one word in its vocabulary, and it is yes. And it is not only responding to my list of desires, it is responding not only to the thinking, the thought atmosphere created by each individual, over 8 billion individuals on planet Earth. It is also responding to and through natural law, spiritual law and physical law. So it's complicated. It could be really complicated. And if our brains were trying to figure out every little thing and make this piece work with this piece, work with this piece, work with this piece, work with this piece. But what we know is that we don't have to do all that. The universe is doing it, and is doing it with no drama because it has created all the pieces. It is the source of all life, not just human life, all life, the life of all of the animals and other living species. It is the creator of all life, the life of the natural elements, earth, wind, fire, mountains, waters, right? It is the creator of all life. And it is being attracted to that which we think. So I said this already, but I'm going to say it again and may say it a couple more times, because when I think of the law of attraction, what I've trained myself to do is say this: the universe is always saying, yes, of course, right? And my thoughts are saying, more, please. More of this, please. And the universe's response is, yes, of course. No drama, no doubt. Nah, it just, of course. Yes, I can make that happen. Yes, I can bring the right people together to create the environment for X to occur. And especially when we're not focused on tangible physical things, but the qualities. Like, I know that I live a life that is a demonstration of peace. I know that I live a life that is a demonstration of joy. And there were times when those were both really radical thoughts for me. And now there's so much of the way I just naturally navigate the world that's what shows up, because I've convinced my subconscious, and I am constantly putting out the vibration for peace and for joy. When I am feeling something different from that or experiencing something different from that, instead of getting consumed by what is different and out of alignment and then beginning to put all my energy there, I notice it and go, wow, ooh, is that worth losing my peace with God? Answer is always no. So then it's like, okay, let me bless that person and keep moving. Or let me understand from that situation what I need to incorporate in my life, because I don't want to keep feeding that situation. And then once I get that, it's like I start affirming the new. And and I want to say, and before I know it, but not like a magic trick, but then I see my life transition back to the peace, back to the joy that was always there, but there was a layer of something else over it. So Ernest Holmes reminds us in this chapter on the law of attraction at the bottom of page 296. Now we know, and knowing means using the law in a constructive way. I and my Father are one, or I and the universal mind are one. This is strength for the weak and it's life for all who believe. So just repeating that, because it's so crucial. On page 297, he talks about attracting friends. And I'm not going to go into much detail here, but Emerson said, and Ernest Holmes quotes Emerson, if you want a friend, be a friend. As the idea of friendship dawns upon the consciousness, the law of attraction produces friends. For one is the picture and one is the thing itself. And near the end of that section, on the top of page 299, Ernest Holmes writes, the God of love cannot hear the prayers of the one who fails to love. In our meditation for friendship, let us make our unity with all people, with all life. And I use this quote a lot in the work that I do with spiritual communities around being inclusive, because it's easy to take the law of attraction and only think about, I'm attracting what I want. I'm supposed to use it for my good. I can get whatever I want and you're on your own, like take care of yourself. But I love that Ernest Holmes reminds us that we are to make our unity with all people and with all life. And in this context of friendship, which could be the context of respect or the context of harmony, then the God of love cannot hear the prayer of the one who fails to love. If I fail to love others, then why would I think I would be rewarded with loving relationships? If I demonize people who are from a different identity group than my own, then why would I expect that I would be accepted by people from other identity groups? So the law of attraction here gets combined with maybe the law of reciprocity, or the law of correspondence, which is what Ernest Holmes ends this chapter in. In the section of attracting success, which begins at the bottom of page 299, there's some really valuable information and very important reminders of calls to action. And he does a really good job of reminding us that success isn't about what we might label success on the human plane. You know, how much money are you making? How many new toys do you have? Do you have the, what the influencers are trying to sell you on TikTok or Instagram, right? Do you have the latest car? That's not, that may be success as you define it. But Ernest Holmes talks about attracting success simply being attracting that which is important to you and having demonstrations. And so he starts off this section with, we mean by demonstration, bringing into our experience something which we had not experienced before, bringing it in as a result of conscious thought. And he reminds us that if we're not doing that, then we are deluding ourselves and we are not actually using principle. And that is really so important that Ernest Holmes brings it back to what is the principle here about the law of attraction, and whether it is tied to what the current or contemporary definition of success is. Anytime we are demonstrating what we are claiming and demonstrating movement toward what we are claiming as the experience we want to have and that we are having, then that is success. That is successful use of the law of attraction. And one of the most important concepts with attracting or manifesting or healing is understanding the difference between outlining and choosing. So from the bottom of page 300 and through page 301, Ernest Holmes does a great job of helping us to remember it's not our job to fill in all the steps of the how. If we are using the law of attraction, our job is to be crystal clear about the what, and then leave the how to spirit, doing our part with things that are humanly needed to be done, but not outlining. So at the top of page 301, Ernest Holmes writes this: we must be specific in what we do while at the same time never outlining how it shall be done. Remember, we are dealing with capital I intelligence. It is going to evolve our concept exactly as we involve it. God is going to evolve our concept exactly how we involve God. So at all times, a little bit lower in the paragraph or in the next paragraph, at all times we are either drawing things to us or pushing them away. Next paragraph, first sentence, we live in capital M mind, and it can only return to us only what we think into it. law of attraction. What we think, our thoughts become things. And our job is to be super clear about what we want. And again, I really dislike that. I feel it's important to say what we want is not just about material things. What we want means what kind of life do we want to experience? What are the attributes and qualities of God that we want to grow in our lives? How do we want to show up? What is the overall experience that we want our life to represent? So don't stop or don't limit yourself to thinking the law of attraction is just for use to get things or to surpass others. It really is a much deeper, ancient principle that what we think drives what we experience. So in the time that we have remaining, I want to highlight a couple of things as we look at this chapter on the law of attraction. So Ernest Holmes at the bottom of 302 starts a section where he reminds us there are no failures. If one appears to have failed, they should realize that there are no failures in the universe. Completely erase the idea of failure by stating there are no failures. If you believe that you failed last year, you will be likely to fail again this year unless the false thought is erased. Break down everything except the recognition of the one perfect power, which is not contingent upon any place, any person, any condition, any time of year, anything but itself. Spirit never fails. So you may have had an experience you didn't like. Okay, great. I didn't like that, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about what I want to have instead. It wasn't a failure that on a human scale, it felt like it was a failure when I found myself going through divorce proceedings. It felt like I had failed because I was intent on that relationship being my primary relationship, my primary partner for the duration of my human life. But the reality is that wasn't a failure. It was an evolution of both me and my partner at the time that we were both evolving, and the end of that relationship actually gave me things that I needed that really laid a foundation for things that came later in my human life. And so it wasn't a failure, it was an evolution. And I'm not just using that as pretty words. It's like, oh, what if I could remember that when things don't work or when things don't go the way I would like them to go? Everything is good or it's leading to good. So let me keep going and see where this is leading, because it must be a necessary experience toward something I am really wanting to have in my life. So that section is really good on no failures, and no personal responsibility is the second to the last section. Every idea is bound to produce an effect exactly like its cause. This actually, it's a very short subsection, but it is the reminder that the universe is responding to everything, not just everything we think, but everything that anyone and everyone is thinking. And so the mind is constantly giving birth to universal mind, which is constantly giving birth to the manifestation of what is being dropped into universal mind. So I don't have personal responsibility to make God do anything, because God, the universe, spirit, is doing what it always does, which is responding to that which we say we want, and responding in the context of the law of attraction and all the other spiritual laws. Ernest Holmes uses that as the bridge to go to the final subsection in this chapter. And thanks, Shay, for that comment, right? We don't know what anything is for. I love the Course of Miracles. There's so much wisdom in it, and that is one of them, right? We don't know what anything is for, except I do. Now I would say I know what everything is for, right? I know everything is happening for my good. I know that everything is happening for me to use. Everything is happening as part of my yellow brick road to the land of Oz. And so, yes, we're constantly evolving. And Wayne, I agree with yourself. We have to know ourselves, and we have to choose ourselves and what we want, and not be a victim to whatever is happening in the world. Oh, okay. I have like 2 minutes to finish this chapter. The law of correspondence. Ernest Holmes really takes us back to the Bible, and it's where Christ says, awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, the Christ shall give thee light. And the Bible scripture, prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it, then I am not I am, right? So everything, not just from the Bible, not just from Ernest Holmes, but the basic spiritual principle that the law of attraction is attracting that seed which you planted and giving it to you for your good. My hope is that during this coming week, you experience lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of good, and that you work the law of attraction to deliver more good into your life. And then you come back next Saturday at 9 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Mountain Time for the Saturday morning Science of Mind and Spirit conversation. My name is Tracy Brown, and I'm so glad you're with us. And we'll see you again. We'll see you again real soon.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.